living in, we are competing in, we are repeating in, we are believing in. It's time for us to shift our mind from best in the world to best for the world. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. It creates a new world to mind a shift, intentionality, perceptuality, conceptuality. We are choosing to shift our mind to best for the world, best for our world. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional.
Hello and welcome to Emprogage's way of working, which is this specific concept for this Best for the World broadcast. My name is Stella Nordahl and I'm a co-creator in Emprogage, which is a consultancy firm where we work for what is best for the world. And we do it in many different ways, and we have what we have in common is that we all want to work for this shift from striving to become best in the world to all be best for the world. So that's what is uniting us. And we also have joint way of working, and that is what we're going to look into today. In this episode, we have actually one episode before. If you're interested in the description of the whole Emprogage being, I recommend you to peek into that episode. And I would also like to say thank you to all my co-creators in Emprogage during the years for this fantastic organization to be part of. All of it is also described in written in this text called Emprogage Being, and you can find it and download it on emprogage.com. It's called Emprogage Being. There is everything about how this company came about and how it's organized, how it sees the world and itself, and all the Emprogage and co-creators that relates to this entity called Emprogage. So what we're going to do today is that we're going to work more on the how, and as we do that, I welcome you to really feel in what I'm going to talk about, and that is the organizing principles of Emprogage. And to be able to work for what's best for the world, you have to have a plan in some way and some sense. And first of all, you have to realize that best for the world is different for different people. And can we then find some kind of way forward together? We believe so. And one of those ideas is that increased consciousness goes in the direction for what is best for the world. And that means seeing more than can maybe be seen today. Means that we have to always have some kind of an open mind on what lies before us, and also how can we interpret what we see and what we hear and what we want, and use not only what can be measured but also what can't be measured, and we call it, for instance, intent and intuition. So that's a little bit about what's the topic for this specific episode is all about. Once again, welcome, and for you who have just joined, this is also live streamed. My name is Stella Nordahl, and I'm one out of today's 17 co-creators in Emprogage called Emprogagers, and we are also more co-creators that engage in this endeavor, I would call it. And one of the journeys that we're on is actually this Best for the World broadcast, which came about a year ago. Now it's 2021 and 2020, as the pandemic came into our world. We all wanted to see if we could if we could take this Corona and see the opportunities it gave, and now a year later, we have had a year of change, and hopefully also a year of change when we look forward. And the year of change in front of us, it could be seen as what we intentionally want to change. So this is actually the things we do. We work in many various topics, and it's all about then working for what is best for the world. And so what I'm thinking of here is that we're going to do this short broadcast here, and talking about organizing principles. So talking about organizing principles, what does that mean? First of all, we have in Emprogage decided upon how we overall want to engage in best for the world, and that is by intentionally choosing empathy, proactivity, and engagement. And how come that? That came about because we realized that all of those, we can call it dimensions. It's empathy over sympathy. It's proactivity before reactivity. It's engagement over attendance, and we also choose love before fear. It's all described in this book. It's called Intentional Decisions. There is this is in Swedish. There is also a shorter version in English called "In an Intentional Story of Intent," and you can also find a link to that on Emprogage webpage, emprogage.com. Okay, so what I want us to do now is to actually look into those organizing principles, which are all related to empathy, proactivity, and engagement, and how that relates to the day-to-day life in Emprogage, and how it relates to the eye context, how it relates to other co-creators, and also how we look at the world. So if you want to follow me, you can go into emprogage.com, and beneath how, you also find organizing principles. So that's what I'm going to do now, as I move a little bit around here. Emprogage.com, and then underneath how, there is a description of the organizing principles. So first of all, our organizing principles, they define our way of being and the way we organize Emprogage as well as ourselves. And the organizing principles should be seen as a whole. So even if I now talk about them one by one, they should be seen as a whole. And the principles and our attitude and the way we act are in line with our joint purpose, that is working for what is best for the world, and support our guiding principles. And the guiding principles, that's the main, as I spoke about. We choose empathy before sympathy. We choose proactivity over reactivity, and engagement before attendance. And as our organizing principles, we also choose love before fear, both and instead of either or, including we as entity instead of we and they. We choose conversation and dialogue instead of debate and polemics, and we listen and pose questions to understand instead of questioning. We clarify, illustrate, and adjust rather than explain and correct. So what does this all mean then? And it's first when you really live this that it has some kind of a meaning. So what we have done is that we have seen the organizing principles in a context. And first of all, in relation to openness, as openness is something that is very important if you're going to be able to do something tomorrow that you haven't done today. So if you're talking about change or transformation, openness is a key factor. And the organizing principles in relation to openness means that we are open for questions, and we also ask questions to understand and create mutual clarity and under any circumstance. We are curious and present to endorse mutual engagement, and we promote life-affirming setups. So life-affirming is about life creates life. Okay. So we challenge and explore power play behavior, and seek to find the life-affirming needs behind it. So there is like a curiosity if there is a power play behavior on stake, and what lies behind them. Those are the organizing principles in relation to openness. We also have them concerning choice, responsibility, and participation. So this is a self-organized company, and self-organization doesn't mean that you organize yourself. It's about how the entity as a whole self-organize, and also how parts of it engage and self-organize. And we have something we call cells. It could be good to know. So concerning choice, responsibility, and participation, we create opportunity and connect the desired consequences with responsibility. So if there is a broken connection, we see to see if we can find it, the consequence connected to responsibility. We as individuals are competent and capable of making conscious choice. That means that we are every Emprogage and co-creator are capable of making choices and conscious choices. That is a fundamental issue. And decisions are collectively distributed, and that doesn't mean that it's everyone have to say yes or no. It means that decisions can be taken distributed all over the organizations. We take responsibility for ourselves and the larger group, and we share responsibility for the result and support each other in creating progress. We prioritize according to our guiding principles and our purpose, and we choose freely and in absence of prestige. Each individual is assumed to be responsible and capable. And we embrace and select our behavior to learn and improve the group's performance by clarifying and adapting rather than explaining and correcting. So the idea behind those are that we more or less redefine responsibility, and we set a new intent for how choice is working, and participation means engagement in all the sense. So what does this all mean then, if it comes to the day-to-day life? Yeah, that's a good question, and we have tried to find it out. So we have again seen it in a context, and what does it then imply in terms of learning? In terms of learning, we act as co-creators, and we grow with each other and choose mutual learning. So learning is almost like a relation. We encourage change, improvement, and renewal in pursuit of what is best for the world. We share knowledge, and we learn from each other and develop together. So in some sense, you need to embrace the togetherness and use it also. Okay, we use reflection and vision as tools to enhance the viable and experiment to learn. So it's not necessarily that there is a way forward. You can always experiment it and explore it. And we create proactive habits to help us follow our purpose. So choice is a fundamental part here. And also when you apply a choice over and over again, you create a habit. And what we want to do is to have those proactive those habits instead of reactive. We identify and stimulate behavior, patterns, and language that moves us to become creators of possibilities. And at the same time, we identify and reduce impact of processes, tools, and language that moves us to victims of circumstances. So that's how we look at it in terms of learning. And what then happens is we have to relate to ourselves. So in relation to the I context, you could say I work from the perspective of what I do gets done. I work from the perspective of what I take responsibility for, I can influence. And through personal reflection, I see choices and choose improvement. And in relation to the I context, we also believe in transparency in all matters because it creates insight, clarity, and sustainability. And I work from the perspective of I self-organize and I self-govern. And in reflection of myself, I continuously find what is important for me and what I desire. So it's an ongoing everlasting process. And I focus on increasing my self-awareness to become comfortable with myself. I also choose to see the good, see opportunity, and see myself in that context. And maybe the last part here is the tricky part, to see yourself in that context and myself in that context. Okay, so what does this mean then in relation to co-creators? A co-creator could be pretty much anyone. Very often as a consultancy firm, we have clients and customers and so on, but it could also be any organization or co-creator, at any level. So in relation to co-creators, we see people and organizations we meet as creators of their own experiences and environments. And in relation to co-creators, we are not observers. We intentionally create what we mean is best for the world. We see the human as part of nature, so we don't separate the people or the human or the person from its environment. And we include the client in the design, invite for co-creation. And we see the individual as having higher level consciousness than the organization. We see the human in the client and rather than the client in the human. So this being said, I wanted to give a short description of those organizing principles and also some short reflections. And one could then wonder, does it work and how does it work? And I would say I firmly believe it works to have a description on how is like something that we very often don't have any thoughts around. But I would say in the latest 30 years, I guess there have been more and more types of how it could have been seen as. The agile is one way of working. There are other ways, of course, like you can say that the how comes directly from the structure. But most of the hows we do are just habits, habits that of course served a purpose at some point, but we don't know if they still serves a purpose. And in this specific context with the Emprogage consultancy firm, Emprogage, is that it's a self-organized system, and it has a purpose that is higher than itself. So it serves like a purpose that working for is best for the world. That means that it also has to govern itself. It has to have a plan for itself, because it doesn't separate itself from its environment. And this is how those organizing principles have been created. And we would like to say thanks to the Foundation for Intentional Decisions that have provided us with fundamental thoughts about how to write those organizing principles, and we have then developed them in our context. So that's pretty much what I wanted to share today within this episode of Emprogage Way of Working. And today we have been focusing on the on the how level, and described the organizing principles of Emprogage. Thank you very much for listening, and hopefully we will also have a third episode coming up. Who knows? But up until then, take care and have a great day. Thank you.
We are creating the world we're now living in. We are competing in. We are repeating in. We are believing in. It's time for us to shift our mind from best in the world to best for the world. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. It creates a new world to mind a shift, intentionality, perceptuality, conceptuality. We are choosing to shift our mind do best for the world, best for our world. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional.